did some of these exercises in the line weight and dynamic sketching lesson, but let's add some variety to it here. I'm drawing lines, dots, curved lines, straight lines, and so on as a template for the practice afterward. Now with one hit, one line stroke, I have to go over these lines from start to finish. It won't be easy right away. It will take many tries when you first start, and then things will be easier after you warm up. With the lines getting longer, the one stroke line will be trickier to get right, so you might have to slow down a little bit or zoom out to hit it right away. For connecting the dots, try to connect in between two dots with one straight line. You can try curved line next, but again, the purpose here is to draw clean, confident lines with one stroke. Next we have this straight continuous line, but we can treat it like the dots and draw over the lines with one hit as well. Now we do the same for the curved lines, which will be much harder to do than straight lines. But doing this will make drawing cleaner ellipses and circles much easier, because eventually the curve will be going all around. Try to rotate the canvas as much as you need to get the curve in the right position. Even I am getting it wrong a few times, because I haven't warmed up yet, but with more examples I'm getting it closer and closer to the original line. After the straight lines and curved lines, let's draw lots of ellipses for the next sheet. First, I draw normal circles side by side. I'm going a bit fast here, but do take your time to get it even more accurate as you draw. Next line is 10 ellipses going in between the lines, first vertically, then horizontally, and then diagonally. Try to vary in between them, or do one whole row each. Also vary the sizes of the ellipses and the space in between. You can also design how the ellipses will be within the line, like around triangles with different sizes as they go around each zone. Some are big, some are medium, some are small, just to cover every empty space in there. Try to draw different thickness, sizes, and orientation as well. For the next one, I add some kind of perspective line going to our vanishing point. And as we go further and further, the ellipses get smaller and smaller in size. But you can also do different orientation as well on each row. Just make it look interesting as you do it, so you don't get bored. It's always good to enjoy the process, not just finish a quantity of sheets. Doing more variety here and there with very large ellipses and tiny ones. You can also add more ellipses inside of the bigger one. Try to design a pattern in it with varying sizes and orientations. You can also add overlapping ellipses covering half of the ones before. Try to combine more than one idea like overlapping ellipses and interior ellipses in different sizes. Or try different pattern of ellipses within different shape of ellipses. By the end of this exercise, you can just design something out of the ellipses. Big, small, interior ones, rotating all around. Add as much variety as possible to have fun and exercise your dynamic sketching in the same time. Next, we will go over textures. Texture with different thicknesses, line weight, and value. This will help a lot with adding line weight and texture for your drawing. Try to draw certain texture from one side to the other with varying values. Thicker, darker, and smaller on the left side, and thinner, lighter, and bigger stroke on the right side. Think of creative ways to draw textures of items, objects, animals, fabric, trees, graphics, and so on. I'm using any type of line in this exercise. Lines, curves, dots, patterns, rectangles, ellipses, circles, all of them. This is basically a combination of the previous exercises with more complexity added to it. Always build upon your practice. Add more factors and combine 2 or 3 exercises together to get the most out of it and to have fun as well. As you can see, you can use any pattern you want, as long as you try to vary the values, sizes, shapes, and so on. You can also look for some reference photos, like animal skin, floral patterns, detail patterns, and anything you can use to make this more complex. In the lightweight lesson, we started to add different line weight on boxes in different situations. But what about complex one? This exercise is both a practice on line quality and line weight together. Instead of drawing this chest of drawers from scratch, I will use it to practice both techniques. So first I draw it in a very light and consistent line all around with one stroke per edge, just like we did earlier with the lines and the circles. So I want all of it drawn one head per edge. Next, after it's done, I will add line quality on top to make the lines vary around the object based on perspective, exterior versus interior, overlapping, and whatnot. So we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone here and do both. I'm rotating the canvas as much as possible to get cleaner line right away without going back and forth with bad shaky lines. Once I'm done with the line quality phase, I take it aside and start adding the new layer of line weight. Now, this line weight is not shown in the reference, so you have to figure it out yourself from what we talked about in the lesson. First, I will start with the bottom edges of the drawers and the back side. I like to imagine the light source coming from the top left, and everything on the right will be in the shadows. Next, I will add more line weight on the overlaps, separating the objects in the front from the ones in the back. I will leave the interior details lighter than the rest, while the exterior ones a bit thicker. Varying the light weight gives your drawing more life and makes it more interesting to look at. Once I finish with the line weight, I can start adding values here and there and some textures with the hatch lines. Now adding the final details all around. Maybe we can add shadows inside the drawers with hatch lines on a new layer and then deleting the extra edges. We can duplicate it to make it even darker, and if it's too much, we can simply lower the opacity on the whole layer. Let's add some shadows to the inclination of the drawer's sides. And it's done. Look how different it is from the initial sketch. It has more life, it looks more professional, and does explain the object way more than just normal lines. That's the beauty of the dynamic sketching. It represents your ideas in a much better way. Let's do more examples on this. First, line quality. Try to hit all the lines with one stroke, in a clean, confident lines. If you want to draw this without tracing, go ahead. But my purpose of this lesson is for you to collect as much reference from the interior and focus on enhancing your line quality and line weight for this exercise. We can always draw them later, but for now, let's focus on the line weight. Okay, now that tracing is done, let's move it to the side and start adding the line weight. Just like we did before, decide where your shadows are, where the ground is, what is the foreground and what is the background. What do you want your viewer to look at first, and so on. In this example, the connection lines are important to show the twist. So whenever the object is moving from the background to the foreground and vice versa, the T connection in between has to have more weight on it to show the overlapping. Once you start going into the interior zone from the exterior one, the lines will taper off back into a light weight line. Now we can move on to the fine details and textures. I'm adding some hash lines to show the dark side of the bottle and also give it more form by showing where the object is twisting and turning. We can also add form lines if you want to emphasize the shape of the bottle. And it's done, and this is it before and after. We are moving up the scale in difficulty, no straight line in this example, all curves. So trying to get a confident line here will take more than one trial. Challenge yourself with these examples and make it harder on yourself as you get more confident. Always rotate the canvas to fit your hand motion better. Be comfortable as you draw long curves and take as much time as you need. Once it's done, it's a bit too confusing, so it's essential here to add more line weight. Otherwise, it will look weird. So let's add more line weight around the important areas like the bottom and the separating lines on the side. Also on the exterior edge of the bottom. Once we are done with the line weight, we can move on to textures and the hash lines on the ridges around the middle area of the bottom. And it's done. And here's the before and after comparison. Looks much better. Now for this next example, we have again lots of curves and very sharp edges. So let's trace it first with confident lines before moving on to the line weight. You can always draw longer curves even beyond the object and erase them later as long as your motion fits the shape of the object. You can also draw half the curve, but be careful when you connect the other half. Make sure the connection is clean. Moving on to the line weight, let's do what we have been doing with the previous examples and add the line weights where we need them. You can see here also that T-shaped connection from the exterior going into the interior is not cut, it's tapered off as it goes inside the object. It will give a better and more elegant look when you taper it off. Now add the textures and values with some hash lines. And it's done. Moving on to a completely curvy example, 4 ellipses on this one. So let's trace it first and take our time with these long curves. As you can see, these curves will take lots of trials. Another tip you can use when you get a closed curve like this, you can use a transformation tool by hitting Ctrl T and wrap it to fit the curve exactly. But if you see that it will harm the curve, you can always segment the curve into sections. Okay, now it's done. Let's move it to the side and add the line weight. We have few levels here overlapping each other. The big curve is in the front, then it twists away toward the background, and the other part is behind it. So the line should show the difference as we go toward the background. I'm going a bit too fast and also the video is sped up here, but I would tell you to slow down and take your time with the lines so they don't look a bit rough like they are here. Now adding some hash lines for the values and the textures. I think I rushed this one out, so it doesn't look that good. I can go at it again, but let's move on to another example instead with more details. This is basically a concept design for a bottle with lots of curves and details, so let's do the tracing first with confident strokes. Now for the line weight, let's take a bit longer here so we have a better representation for the drawing. I add thicker lines for the joints in between the parts of the bottle with tapering thickness as we go toward the interior parts. I add thicker lines for the exterior and the shadows area next. We go lighter as we go into the interior details, but with varying thickness around the shadows. I'm considering the light to be from the right side, so I will add more shadows toward the left side of the bottle. Now to add more textures, form lines and values with some hash lines. I add hash lines on the new layer, so I can remove any extra lines I don't need without messing the lines of the drawing. And here's the final drawing in comparison to the original sketch. Much better. For the final example, let's move on to an interior shot and trace it as well. Now I still have one more exercise to work on, so I'm not gonna trace the whole room because it's gonna take a while. But I do advise you to trace the whole thing and again do line quality and line weight practice on top. But for now, I will trace the sofa by itself and add the line weight on top. You can go as complex as you want, even with figures and characters, and practice what you learned so far on more and more complex examples. Always challenge yourself with harder and harder exercises, so you can learn more instead of doing what is comfortable to you. Remember that your skills will only develop outside your comfort zone, not inside it. We did this so many times, so now you can take it aside and do the line weight just like we did with many examples before. I just wanted you to know that it's not always props or objects. You can go as big as you want. But for now, let's move on to the teaser exercise, because I really can't wait to show you the teaser of what's coming in the second book. This is what we were learning all the stuff in book 1 for. It's the beginning of concept art, the beginning of breaking the wall, the start of creating instead of copying. It's what took me 4 to 5 years to break the wall and start designing instead of copying reference photos exactly as they are. But this video is getting a bit long, and I want you to practice as much as possible from what you saw here already. I know I have been teasing this last exercise for a while, but it will be worth it, and we will do it in the next video. As always, if you like this video, feel free to leave a like. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section, and I will do my best to answer them as soon as possible. To stay notified for future lessons, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.